Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Hope you've had a nice weekend. I certainly have. And a slightly unusual thing we have for you this afternoon is I'm going to be asking the questions. Sort of leisurely Sunday afternoon fireside chat. And my fireside chat companion is an actor I've worked with before, but never, even though we share a place in the Marvel Universe, in the Marvel Universe. Some of you have probably taken your picture with her already. She's been in so many movies you love, including the Marvel ones. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to introduce Elizabeth Olsen, Wanda Maximoff.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Whoa, got a lot of Loki horns in the audience.
Hats off to everybody. Some of the cosplayers this weekend have been extraordinary, including the woman who came as in a costume dressed like this.
Literally? Someone dressed like you?
Blue
in
jumper,
navy?
blue jeans, gray boots, glasses.
That's hilarious.
It's kind of amazing.
That's incredible.
There was a bear dressed like this. All kinds of things. Anyway, listen.
That's very cool.
I got to do my job now. Hi, Lizzie.
Hi, Tom.
So, we made a film together. We shot it. Well, how long ago now? 4 years ago. Almost exactly to the day.
Yeah, because it was fall.
Yeah, in the autumn of 2014, called I Saw the Light.
Yes. We got to work in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Yep.
Anyone from Louisiana? Cool, 3. That's great. And we had a great time working with each other.
Yeah,
and
great.
I had just finished doing Age of Ultron and was about to do Civil War.
Yeah.
And I was asking you all about your experience for the last 5 years playing Loki.
So, I was doing my homework for this chat. And what's amazing is, obviously, we played Hank Williams and Audrey Mae Shepherd in I Saw the Light. We played husband and wife. They had a very tempestuous relationship. But Lizzie and I have never actually spent a single day on set of a Marvel movie together.
Yep.
And you'd think there aren't that many points of connection between Loki and Wanda. But I realized...
What did you realize?
I realized this. So Loki, correct me if I'm wrong, Loki is indirectly responsible, or in some roundabout way, for the initial
Powers.
enhancement of Wanda.
That's correct.
Because of the scepter,
Yes, and the
Mind Stone.
Mind Stone.
The Mind Stone being...
The thing that gave me power and
Yeah.
my brother Quicksilver. Too bad. That was sad. That was... We lost him too, you guys.
So that basically the scepter, which Loki wields in Avengers 1, which contains the Mind Stone, and with which Loki controls the minds of Eric Selvig and Clint Barton, is the very same Mind Stone that gives Wanda her power.
True.
Connection point 1.
Very cool. Very cool.
And my second point was a slightly more
Emotional?
psychological one,
Yeah.
which is that they're both connected by trauma
Yes.
and loss,
Yes.
that they both feel alone in the universe.
Yes.
And they both have a brother.
Yes. Well, had.
Had. Yeah.
I know, again, jeez.
And I thought that was really interesting, because in a way they're both sorcerers, or their powers aren't. Both Loki and with Wanda, there's no vibranium, there's no iron suit, there's no celestial hammer of any kind.
It's powered by a lot of rage and emotion and sadness, which we get to do. We get to have a lot of rage and emotion and sadness.
But I thought that was really interesting as an acting thing, and that actually these are two people who have very complex minds, and that of all the Infinity Stones, the Infinity Stone that they are interested in is the Mind Stone.
That's a great connection, Tom.
You know, I was really thinking about this last night.
I like that.
And then I was thinking of the journey. I kind of did I went back and watched. So your first appearance is the end of the Winter Soldier. Is that right?
Yes. We appeared at the tag scene at the
twins,
end.
Yeah.
And we were being experimented on by Hydra.
By Strucker.
By Strucker.
That's right.
Yes.
With the Mind Stone.
Yes. I feel like I'm taking an exam. He's writing a thesis, and it's a good one.
These traumatized siblings of different points. Anyway, that's really was my point. I was thinking, how do I connect these two characters, apart from the fact that it's Hank and Audrey? But actually, they have this, here we are at we're at the same place as you are, which is having seen Infinity War, and these 6 Infinity Stones, and actually the Mind Stone is the thing that connects these two. And also a sense of, I think, sacrifice, because I think the thing you have to do at the end of Infinity War is a kind of sacrifice.
Yeah, I would agree.
And arguably Loki makes a similar one.
It's only going to get worse.
So here's what I was wondering, process-wise. We made a film, and it was about 2 people very much in a human reality. And whenever we were in a scene together, we were in the same room, in a set that had been built by a production designer, and dressed in costumes. It all was, the sense of reality was given to us by the crew.
Yes.
And you're making a film, you're making a Marvel movie, and so much of it is not real.
Right.
The space you're in, the thing you're looking at, and how do you find that as an actor?
I want to ask you that after, but
Sure.
For me, it's a fun game again of like being on the playground and getting to be a child and be imaginative, but trying to figure out whatever stakes those actually could be in your own life and replacing them in a way. And then I learned at a certain point along the way that squinting your eyes is very powerful, regardless of how you actually feel. A stunt person told me that. They're like, if you just squint your eyes, it will look very, very strong. I was like, okay, I'll just start doing this then. So that's also important. Yeah. But what I wanted to ask you, because you created Loki, and in the comics, he is a mischievous character. But when you were starting to create him, and I know you're also, by working with you, you're very detailed with everything that goes into a character physically and also emotionally. Yeah. Were you thinking at all about what it could become iconically? Or were you leaving that to like costume designers and makeup? Because you became an iconic character within the last 10 years. And I think that's very cool.
Honestly, it was like coming at the character for the first time. I just found him so interesting in that, first of all, he's an archetype that's been around for 2 going on 3 millennia. I don't know how far back exactly the Norse myths go, but the Scandinavian folklore has been around for, for as long as almost the Greco-Roman folklore. So Loki is a figure in the collective unconscious.
Do you mean literally, like in Norse mythology?
In Norse mythology,
there's something named Loki.
Loki, he's a god, and he's the god of mischief.
I just thought it was a comic.
Yeah. You learn something new every day.
Did you follow up on your Norse mythology?
I did. I read some. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was really interesting for me was reading the Norse myths and figuring out who Loki was and Odin and Frigga. You all probably know the days of the week are named. 3 days of the week are named. Thursday is Thor's day. Wednesday is Odin's day, and Friday is Frigga's day.
You're going to change everyone's calendar right now. Everyone's going to go home, and they're going to be like, I want a Thor-themed calendar.
There's no Loki day.
Yes.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
So in the Norse myths, actually, there's a really tremendous, and I know some of you have asked me to sign it this weekend. Neil Gaiman has written a new anthology of the Norse myths, and there's lots of stories about Loki and Thor, and Loki always was somebody in the company of the gods. They didn't trust him, they didn't particularly like him, but they knew he was necessary. And when they were really up against it and they couldn't think of a solution to a problem, a hand would go up from the end of the table and they go, okay, Loki, what have you got? What's your plan? And it would be completely out of left field, very strange, illogical, irrational, and chaotic. But he would win the day, and Asgard would be preserved. And I thought that was the idea that chaos is something that we sometimes need, that we like things to be ordered, and actually there's this character that we've invented to exist in our minds who represents chaos and mischief. And then what Stan Lee did, and Jack Kirby, and all the people who've illustrated for Marvel, is they took that sort of kernel and he developed it into his place in the Marvel Universe, which is mischievous, anarchic, and initially more two-dimensional. But as the comics go on, since the 60s into the 70s, 80s, and especially the 90s and the noughties, he's a deeply damaged character. There's so much emotion in it, and also ambiguous. He's not even gendered, really. He can be a man or a woman.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah. There's a lady Loki. There's a kid Loki. There's he's pansexual in some extraordinary way. Yeah.
So, will you be doing any of the other Lokis?
No. I don't. What are you asking exactly?
Are you going to do a Loki that's not archetypal male?
I think if anyone wants to tell that story, I'm not the guy.
Okay.
I think that needs to be a woman or someone who identifies as a woman.
Yeah.
I'd never answered your question.
Sorry. Yes, iconic.
Yeah. So Kenneth Branagh, when he was asked by Kevin Feige to make the first Thor film, and it all kind of, the whole Thor universe, in a way, we owe to Ken Branagh. What he recognized was obviously the storytelling tradition he grew up in was this dynastic drama, a powerful narrative about kings and princes and fathers and sons. And Kenneth Branagh has done so much Shakespeare. Of course, Shakespeare is the best and the first at that kind of thing. And so he decided to make Thor in the mold of those great dynastic plays by Shakespeare, like Henry IV or King Lear, or...
Which you've played, Henry.
I played, Prince Hal and Henry V, yeah.
He's very talented.
No, come on.
He's very, very talented.
So the first film really is meant to be that the things we drew from the comics were the key relationships between brothers and between fathers and sons, because anyone, doesn't matter where you're from, you can relate to being misunderstood within your own family.
Yes.
And that was really where I thought, well, I'll try and do my best in terms of the shape-shifting and the the magic and the sorcery and the mischief and the kind of chaos, but also to realize that behind all that was a broken heart. To me, that's just a great character. And then it was really fun working with Alexandra Byrne, who designed the costumes for the first Thor film and Avengers and Ultron.
Yeah.
And she comes from an amazing background in very theatrical, stylized costumes. She, I think, won an Oscar for her costumes for Elizabeth with Kate Blanchett. And so she designed this royal family to look like a royal family, but she also knew we had to fight, and Chris had to be able to move, and he had to wield the hammer. And in the comics, he got black hair, so I dyed my hair black, and I didn't have a beard then. And he's become something. I mean, I should say, like, I think Loki has become what he's become because of the audience. That the only reason he's been around for 10 years is because of you guys. So thank you.
Did you think you were going to be doing this for a decade of your life?
Nope. I did not. I really didn't.
Does it get more fun to you, or does it become harder because you feel like the stakes keep needing to meet a different level, or is it the same process each time you go back in the wig? Now wig.
Yeah, it's just been such an extraordinary journey with so many different chapters.
I found that it got easier because I was so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Being a small piece of this really big puzzle, and I wanted to just focus on my piece, and I was intimidated by everyone, and then eventually I started to feel more comfortable, and then there's a sense of freedom.
Yeah.
Even with like the last one we just did, just even freedom with movement and adapting and changing and growing and adjusting, and it almost becomes like you have more ownership each step of the way, and so I've loved that experience.
I think it's also, isn't it, understanding the process behind making these films, and as I think everybody at Marvel, I think they take huge confidence with every new leap. Kevin Feige has told me that the fact that people enjoyed the first Thor film gave him the confidence to dream Guardians of the Galaxy into existence. He thought, okay, people accept that superheroes are going to leave Earth and go into space. And then when Guardians worked, it was like he knew he could start cooking Infinity War. I think so. As Marvel have grown in their extraordinary and unprecedented creative confidence, I think I felt more confident in their processes. I mean, it's so easy to rewrite your own history. I remember being terrified making the first Avengers film because it wasn't a given that it was going to work. It only worked based on how hard we worked to make it work, if that makes sense.
And everyone here, that's why it worked also.
That's right. Yeah.
The fans to continue to show up.
Yeah.
I mean, we truly make these movies only thinking of fans, and that's what Kevin Feige cares about first and foremost.
Yeah.
Is he just wants to keep you guys on your toes and entertain you and bring the stories that you love, and it's really truly always comes back to the fans. It's the most amazing thing, because I feel like sometimes some people get a little ahead of themselves and they think more about their ego, but if you can put what other people really want and love and desire at the forefront of making something, then you do it with a lot of soul and a lot of care.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been trying to do specifically with the Marvel franchise, I think.
It's also to do with your curiosity. And I think it's given us the confidence to, I mean, what's amazing to me is that making the first Avengers, I asked Joss Whedon lots of questions about, who are these aliens and where have they come from? And
what do they look like?
What do they look like? Yeah. And what's the deal that's been made? So Loki's been given this scepter by whom and for what purpose? And I think I was one of the first people to ask him that question, and he said, Thanos. So I go, who? Tell me about him. And then Kevin is on set, and they tell me about Thanos, and I go, so there's a thing in the Tesseract, and there's one in the scepter. Okay, but I don't know at this point that Ultron is coming around, and that there are going to be new characters based on what's inside Loki's scepter. I mean, the thing is, after the Dark World, I went off on a sabbatical, and I wasn't in the Marvel Universe for a while, and I went to watch all the new films as they came out. And they was always talking about Loki's scepter, and I was like, still in there somewhere.
Was Only Lovers Left Alive during that sabbatical?
Yes. Yes, yeah.
Did you find a lot of comparisons, or not at all? They're completely separate. I just think the way they look, I'm like, oh, there's Tom as the vampire, and there's Tom. Or
I mean, apart from a long black wig, I think they deviate after that.
But did that worry you, that you created this image of an iconic character that has paler skin and dark hair, and now you're making this really amazing Jarmusch film that ends up being super, super special, and getting to work with Tilda Swinton, who's also in our universe now. I would be curious, like, are these different enough?
Jim was concerned about it in one way, but only because he'd written that film 10 years beforehand, before I'd played Loki. And he was quite careful to distinguish the two. I mean, the most consistent note that Jim Jarmusch gave me in that film was, Tom, maybe smile less. And because Loki smiles all the time because he's having a great time, he's the god of mischief, and Adam is heavy and interior and introverted and quiet. But yeah, I was aware when making it that they should be very different characters, and they feel like very different characters.
They are different
energetically.
characters. I just think when you just look at them.
Yeah.
I was just curious if that was something that, because of the timing and the placement of when you did them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. No,
I was
all
just
good.
curious. I could have asked him that in private.
So in the in the comics, I don't know this. So I genuinely don't. How does Wanda become the Scarlet Witch?
Wanda is the child of Magneto. But
Wow.
so she was raised by a different family.
Right.
So that she wasn't aware of her own powers.
Yeah.
And then once she finds out that Magneto is her father, he tries to take her in, and that's how that begins. She was born a mutant.
Right.
Yeah. So she's not actually a witch. So Joss, because X-Men was not our property, Joss had to create a world, because Scarlet Witch does go in between the comic books, between X-Men and Avengers. And so Joss was trying to create an origin story for Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch that would be based in our world.
Right.
And so that's where it became the Hydra human experimentation because of anger from their family being bombed repeatedly in Sokovia.
Yeah. But it also gives you so much, I think.
Yeah, as opposed to just like, I'm a mutant, like, which means a lot too. I'm not saying that, but I'm really not saying that. But because those movies are also beautiful in so many ways of how odd we all feel and separate, and yet there's a home for all of us, and that's what I think is so beautiful about X-Men. But anyway, I don't remember what I was saying. I'm really articulate. What was I saying?
I can't remember. You talking about? You answered the question.
I did. I answered my question.
Yeah, you
Great.
did.
Next.
Yeah.
Do you have another question? Should we ask the audience for questions?
Yeah. Okay. How are we doing for time? Just quickly. Oh no. One thing I wanted to ask you.
Yes.
I don't know if any of you have seen. Hang on.
Stampede.
Wisely and slow, they stumble that run fast. Has anyone seen Sorry for Your Loss? A couple of people, okay.
It's very nice.
Lizzie is in a new series that's streaming on Facebook, and it's called Sorry for Your Loss. How many episodes?
10 episodes, 30 minutes.
10 episodes of 30 minutes. I've only seen the first two, but it's essentially. Well, how would you pitch it? I would say it was about grief.
It's a story about a young widow, a newly widowed woman who's dealing with the loss of her husband, and it's more of a reflection of the monotony and isolation of grief, less than the dramatics. Because I feel like a lot of times we see grief and it's dramatized to a place that's almost unrelatable, or you can just put someone over there and you can judge them as an outsider, but we try and bring the audience in and put themselves in the situation that we all have to go through or have already gone through multiple times, of what it means for your life to completely change with the loss of the most important person to you. And it's kind of it's a quieter reflection on that, as opposed to throwing a lot of crazy turns.
Lizzie is amazing in it. It's really honest, authentic work. So if you can seek it out, I recommend it.
Thank you, Tom.
There's no yodeling in that one, sadly.
Wow. No.
Maybe there is. Should we take some questions? Yeah.
Hi, I love you both so much. Elizabeth, who could you say you've gotten closest with on set, and who do you see yourself being friends with 20 years from now?
That's a good question. It depends on which movie it was. Aaron's already a good close friend who played Quicksilver, but he's gone. So then I'm like, well, and then I end up making
Gone but not forgotten.
Yeah, not forgotten.
You're still friends, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very close. And then Renner and I made a couple movies together, Wind River, and he kind of became my surrogate brother in Captain America: Civil War. So I got very close with him. And
He anoints you as an Avenger
he does.
in Ultron.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
if you go out there, you're an Avenger.
Yeah, and
And
they
then
have this amazing continuation of like a big brother relationship.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I've worked with Renner, and also we were the first ones to work on that in Italy. He was the only actor I worked with. I worked with him before I worked with Aaron. And then Paul Bettany, my vision. I just love that guy so much. And so yeah, those are my answers about friendship.
Is Tom? Wait,